Hey folks, this is Tim Freitas with the Garden of English. We're going to start our series on how to introduce synthesis, and we'll work on looking at just synthesis prompts at first, and then we'll talk about thesis statements, body paragraphing, and conclusions, kind of similar to what we did with rhetorical analysis. I want to start with synthesis by quoting a very good friend of mine named Crystal Liberty, and she always says, argue about ideas and not things. And so the first thing that I encourage teachers to do and students to do when they begin learning about synthesis and how to create research papers is to actually think about the ideas of what they're trying to convey, as opposed to about the things that they want to talk about. And the reason why is because the strongest papers that you'll see are papers that really focus on having a unifying idea throughout the paper, and they don't just talk about the topic of the paper. So just an example that I could give about that would be, I was reading the library prompt a few years ago, and the best papers that I read consistently argued about community, but they used the library to talk about the importance of community and togetherness. And so the papers that really stood out were the ones that could focus on the idea and then use the library to argue about that idea. So another one would be the post office prompt from 2000, well, I don't know, in the early 2010 range, maybe that was 2012. And that's a lot about, the speed of technology and, social expectations. But we can use the post office in order to talk about those ideas. So nonetheless, if we want to teach kids to argue about ideas and not things, but they have to use things to argue their ideas, we do want to actually teach them to focus on ideas when they access their synthesis prompt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pull up the 2011 synthesis prompt, which is the locavore prompt. It does not actually, I should say, there is rumor that you will not see a factors prompt anymore for synthesis, and I can neither confirm nor deny. I don't actually know. But the stable wording, the new prompt stable wording, doesn't fit very well with factors prompts, so I'm willing to bet that we might not see them again, but I never want to say never. But that doesn't matter, because we're not actually focusing on this prompt for the prompt itself, which says that they need to write a paper that identifies the key issues associated with the locavore movement and examine their implications for the community. We want to focus on not the writing task itself. We want to focus on the background in the prompt, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to show kids how do we focus on ideas even when we plan our synthesis essay, so that we can write a strong argument about ideas. And if we do this, it'll actually also help us to teach our students how to actively engage with their sources, especially in a short amount of time. So here's what I do with my students. I have my students read the introductory area and circle all of the words that either are ideas or relate to ideas. So what that means is an idea is just something that's intangible, it's abstract, and if they can find something that's concrete that relates to something intangible, they're going to write that down too. So they'll circle all the idea words, or if there's something that's a little bit more tangible that relates to an idea, they might actually circle it and then write the idea on top of it. So I'll show you what that looks like right here with this prompt with my handy dandy pen here. So I'll read it here, and then I'll tell you what my students would circle, and we'll talk about why, and we'll see how this can actually help with evaluating sources as well. So it says, locavores are people who have decided to eat locally grown or produced products as much as possible. With an eye to nutrition as well as sustainability, resource use that preserves the environment, the locavore movement has become widespread over the past decade. So if we just look at this first part, I'll say, all right, folks, what do we have for ideas that we can pull from this language? And one of the ideas that you'll see here is this word nutrition. Now, nutrition itself isn't necessarily an idea. We can have nutrition facts and whatnot, but nutrition certainly relates to personal health. So my students will make a little note, about personal health right up here, personal health. Okay, and they have an idea. So they're not going to write a paper about locavorism. They're going to write a paper about personal health, and they're going to use locavorism to do it, okay, or potentially so. We then have an idea of sustainability. That's as abstract as it gets, so it's sustainability. We also have the language here that says preserves the environment, so the idea there would be environmentalism. Environmentalism. Okay, or if they just want to circle the word environment, that's fine too. And also we have this language that says the locavore movement has been widespread over the past decade. And now we also have an idea here of social trends. Social trends. Okay, good. And so I'll have the kids annotate for these moments here. And then sometimes they'll even say locally grown, or they'll say produced products. And when we see the word product, that actually implies the economy. And therefore, because it's the local economy, if they're locally grown, it becomes the local economy. And there's an A. That's an A. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Now, as we continue reading, they're going to try to find more idea words that show up. So it says, imagine a community considering organizing a locavore movement. So they're going to circle this word community, that's for sure. It says carefully read the following 7 sources, including the introductory information for each source. Then synthesize from at least 3 of the sources and incorporate it into a coherent, well-developed essay that identifies the key issues associated with the locavore movement and examines their implications for the community. So we'll see that word community show up another time right here, okay? And so now we have quite a list of abstractions that we can give to our students here for ideas that they can formulate their paper on. So what I'll have my students do is I'll have them go to the white space that's right here, and they'll actually write these words down. So we'll have personal health, okay? So we'll have personal health, all right, the economy. We'll have sustainability, and we will have community. Community. All right, and this right here is supposed to say sustainability. Okay, so the kids will actually write those elements down right here. Now, that's nice because we want to show our kids, hey, we're going to write a paper about personal health or the economy or sustainability or the community or the interrelation of many of those things. So now they at least know what ideas they want to focus on in their paper. But what makes this also really nice is that they know that they have to synthesize sources in their paper to convey their argument. And now what we can do is we can actually go on to our source pages. And when we do, if we go to our source pages, when I have my students read from here on out, they are now reading with the ideas from the last page in mind: personal health, economy, sustainability, and community. So when they read their sources, they're now trying to say, okay, do I see language in my sources that relates to these ideas? Because if they read any of this language in here and it relates to an idea on the front, they can then tie that source to the idea. So here's how this would look. Let's just look at the top 2 part. Actually, we'll look at the first paragraph here, and then we'll look at the 5th paragraph. So the first one says, eating local means more for the local economy. According to a study by New Economics Foundation in London, $1 spent locally generates twice as much income for the local economy. When businesses are not owned locally, money leaves the community at every transaction. So my students are going to notice right away that the word economy shows up right here. So they'll circle that, okay? But what they're also going to do is when they see this, this says that locavorism is favorable for the local economy. So they'll actually go back to the front page here, and where it says the economy, they will write source A. Let's get my cursor up. They'll put an A next to economy, and then they'll put a little plus sign. And the reason why is because they know that source A suggests that the economy and the local economy is greatly increased and well serviced because of locavorism. So if they have to now create an argument for locavorism, they're going to say, okay, one of the benefits of it is that it helps the local economy, and they know that source A will indeed help them deal with that, okay? Another part of source A that we could tie to, if I can get over there. There we go. All right, we'll zoom in a little bit. Let's look at this one. If we go to the boldface part where it says eating local is better for air quality and pollution than eating organic. Okay, so they're going to see this right here, and they're going to say, hey, this relates to sustainability, and it says, hey, this is a positive thing. Locavorism is a positive thing for sustainability. They will then, once again, go back to page 1, if I can get back there. There we go. And they'll go back to page 1, and they'll go to sustainability, and they will then mark source A here, and they'll put a little plus there because it shows that source A does indeed suggest that it's better for sustainability as well. Now, the way that this actually correlates well with how kids read their sources is because as they go through and search for the ideas, they're going to list their sources next to the ideas, and they'll put little pluses or minuses, and then they'll be able to see, oh my word, if source A supports that it's good for sustainability, but source C suggests that it's not as good for sustainability, when they see A plus and C minus, they now know that they have two sources in conversation, but they're focusing on the ideas of the sources, not just locavorism. And so because of that, they can then interpret their reading better, because they'll know that this is not necessarily a paper about locavorism, it's a paper about how sustainability is affected because of it. So that's one of the things, that's one of the ways to look at this. Now, if we go to our visual source here, right, when students look at this, they're going to want to notice that it says greenhouse gas emissions. So source D is indeed quite a sustainable, it's a source that deals with sustainability. Now, this is a chart that can be interpreted in multiple ways, so I want to show my kids how to interpret that, but that's not the point of today. The point of today is that the kids will recognize, hey, this is about sustainability, so because of that, I'm going to go back to my first page, and I'm going to make a little note here that says, hey, source D is also about sustainability, okay? And then how they interpret that source, whether it's more positive or negative, depending on how they interpret it, they would then mark right here. Can I use it positively or negatively in my argument? Hey, it's better for sustainability, or maybe it's not making that much of a difference in sustainability. Okay? And then sometimes they're going to notice that some sources don't have anything to do with the economy, and they might have to do with personal health. And because of that, they're then going to see the many different perspectives, okay? The many different perspectives that these sources have. Now, why this is important is because I might have source, let's see if I can go over there, source A, which has a remarkably positive position about locavorism, and I might have source, well, I didn't go through all the sources right now, but I might have source B that also is positive in relation to locavorism, but they might hold the same position, but they'll hold different perspectives, okay? And the reason why is because one is a web blog, and the other one is an excerpt from nutritionists who created the 100-mile diet. So the difference between perspective and position is that the position maintains the same. They both view locavorism in a favorable light, but the perspective is different because one is quoting like health officials, and the other one is here's just common experience in life. And that's part of the new CED, is trying to teach kids the difference between perspective and position. And by just marking which sources can actually converse with one another, and if A and B are both positive and they put B here, they can see, well, wait, so one says locavorism is positive in relation to personal health. The other one says locavorism is positive in relation to the local economy. And now we can see that the position is locavorism is positive, but the perspective is different because one's using the economy, one's using personal health, or a mix of both. Okay, so the point here is this, though. When you teach kids how to how to begin synthesis, you want them to focus on ideas, and you want them to focus on reading the sources through those ideas. So now they can formulate an argument around the ideas as opposed to the topic itself. So we focus on the abstract instead of the concrete, and then we're going to teach them how to use the concrete to convey their abstract arguments. So that's that. If you think that you might need to help kids, actually, I'll give you one more resource here with the idea of finding abstractions. If they have a hard time finding them in here, I do have a list, and I'll try to remember to put this in the link down below, but I do have a list of universal ideas. This is by no means comprehensive, but I often give my students this list right here, and I say, hey, read the background and try to see if any of these words can be tied to the language that's in there, so that kids start to get really familiar with this. And this actually helps with literature as well, because now I can ask a kid, ask a kid, like, what is Frankenstein about? They won't just tell me it's about a monster and a scientist who creates a monster. They'll actually say it's about humanity and it's about empathy, because they now know that we're talking about ideas more than anything else, and that's where we want to get kids to. So anyway, that's just a little introduction to synthesis there, ways to help kids focus on the ideas to create their arguments. As always, please consider supporting the Garden of English, right? You can buy shirts, which are linked down below. You can consider donating, or otherwise you can actually just support by sharing the video and subscribing. So do as you see fit. As always, these videos are free, so you can make whatever choice you want. But we'll come back probably in about a week or maybe a week and a half, depending on how much digital work I have for my online classroom, and we'll talk about generating thesis statements for synthesis.